Happy New Year from the Old-Timers comic book show, where the horse aren't old, but the comics most certainly are. It is 2023, which means our idea of only going 25 years plus back over comic book means we've got another year to talk about, and to talk about the great year that was 1998. Who could I call upon but the Professor?
Hey, Johnny, Happy New Year. How
Happy
are
New
you?
Year, sir. Happy New Year indeed.
Yeah.
Before we get going into the gem that was 1998 and the three books that we've got to talk about, I have a couple of things to show. You ready?
Sure. Yeah.
As promised, as hinted last time around, there you go.
Look at that.
Miss Marvel number 16.
That's whose first appearance is that?
Raven Darkholme.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. Number 17.
Is that the first Mystique?
No, 18 is the first Mystique.
Wow.
I had to pay a whole £70 for it.
Ooh.
Well, that's not so bad. The comic book shop I was going to go to had 16 for £60, 17 for £40, and 18 for £200.
Wow.
So £300 for 3 books, and I couldn't drop the hammer. I couldn't do it.
I like a lot more bang for my buck.
Yeah. And so I did a quick eBay search, and I found a company called Knowing Flame. So if you are in the UK, check these out. They've got a whole range of Silver Age comics, got Modern Age comics, really good prices. Talk to them, get a discount. So this was originally $39.99, but they gave me 10% discount on that, and that was going to be £20. And I got another 10% discount on that. So there you go.
Nice.
And I managed to get a discount on number 18 as well. So even though it still cost me the most. So in the fairness, I spent £123 as opposed to £300 on the 3 books. So I feel like I've won a little bit there. I'm not gonna lie. So all I need now is issue number 1, and I've got a full Miss Marvel run. Check it out.
There you go. Nice.
Yay.
Yay.
Crowd goes wild. All right. What can we say? Right. Talk about this. We're 2023 now, so that means we go back at least 25 years. That means another year has been added into our little chalk book, as you were. In 1998. This was the year that was. Professor, what happened in 1998?
The biggest event in 1998 was that I got married in 1998.
Oh, look at that.
So,
congratulations.
1998, and you would think that the year I get married that comics might have taken a back seat, but they did not.
Good man.
So,
good man.
there was a lot of stuff going on, even in the industry, right? There was a lot of stuff that went on in Marvel in 1998 behind the scenes. Toy Biz bought Marvel. Do you remember that?
I do.
That was one of probably the biggest, what ended up being the biggest disasters in Marvel history, right? Because Toy Biz bought them, and then very shortly thereafter, bankruptcy.
Yeah,
so
it was some sort of crazy scheme where shares were devalued, so people like Toy Biz could get in the thing. Marvel at the time also had a couple of trading card companies. Just as a trading card company,
they
the
owned,
whole market imploded.
Fleer, right? They bought Fleer, the trading company, and they were it was, and they just thought at that point, because they were still riding high from the X-Men of '92 and the movie. This was before the movie came out, but this was a lot of they just thought the speculators were like, we're just going to print all these comics and we're going to make all this money. The X-Men and Spider-Man were selling million copies, not even just a few years earlier. And so these moments in 1998 was almost like they were getting too big for themselves, and they just kind of collapsed into themselves. Shortly after this, 98 was still a pretty big year for comics. But I actually call this year the year of the reboot.
Yeah, I think that's a really good shout, especially from a Marvel point of view. I I think DC became a little bit more entrenched in
Yep.
'98. I did a little bit of search on Comic-Con website, and the number one that was selling was Fathom. That was the
Mm,
best-selling comic book in 1998, followed by other Image books. Danger Girl was in the top 10.
yep.
Then after that was all X-Men. I think
Yep.
the highest selling over the year book was one of the Superman books. You
Hmm.
know, and you think to yourself, man, can't imagine a year where Batman wasn't the big I am.
Yep.
But this is the sense of where DC were at the time, because Marvel has already had this massive market share, and then
Hmm.
Image came along and took all that fantastic art that was the eye catching stuff to promote Image and so on. I think around that time, man, DC were licking the chops. They were the third publisher.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was such an interesting time when you go back on it. I mean, we lived through this as fans, but
Mm-hmm.
just trying to think of like a more volatile time in
Mm-hmm.
comics to be a fan, where you didn't know what was going on, if
Yeah.
especially the fans, especially I wasn't really paying attention at the time. I just wanted my books every week, but
Mm-hmm.
to read in the trades on like the stock markets and like the Marvel going public and
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff was just really kind of interesting to me. And just to have all these reboots come out this year, and let's say if you look back on 1997, which was the year that Image was publishing the
Mm-hmm.
biggest Marvel characters that
Yeah.
were around, right? That was a clear sign that just not everything was right in
Mm-hmm.
Marvel, right? And then with the new number ones coming out, Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Fantastic Four, all got rebooted in the first half of the year, along with the
Mm-hmm.
book we're going to talk about. And then towards the end of the year, they reboot Spider-Man, they
Yep.
reboot Daredevil. Joe Quesada takes over as editor in chief, and they drop Marvel Knights. Remember, they opened the
Yeah. Yeah.
Marvel
Yeah.
Knights
I
with
do.
Punisher and Daredevil. Um,
Silver Sable was in that, and I remember thinking
yep.
there is no way nobody on earth could make a Silver Sable series work. No way.
Yeah. It was just kind of unreal with the amount of stuff that was going on at Marvel at the time, and it was so much yeah, it made your head spin. And yeah, go
Do you
ahead.
think this is kind of because we talked about Marvel in the '70s, um, and Marvel in the '70s could be accused of filling the rack full of all sorts of stuff
Sure.
just to get like product out, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, some of those books we've grown to love, like Miss Marvel and Spider Woman, but there's some dogs like Champions, which only I love, it seems, you know. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't think Marvel learns from its mistakes. So when they had to then sort of like steel itself against the
Hmm.
Image impact, they were
Yep.
like, in the past, all we've done is flooded the racks with comics, and that's all well and good when you've got like, well, I suppose when you've got books that work. But let's not forget of the ones I've mentioned. Champions got cancelled early. Miss Marvel was done early 20s. There was only Spider Woman that lasted any length of time.
Hmm.
And you've got to think to yourself, there's a reason for that. It's and also in the 90s, they'd lost all the big creators.
Yep.
So there was no Jim Lee to draw second-rate teams. There was no Wills Potashio, who was no disrespect to Wills, who was hot for like the briefest of seconds on
And
X
well,
Factor.
and when you think of it, there was not, you know, there wasn't like a minor league system for
Mm.
creators, right? You were big league or you were the
Scott
second
Lobdell.
level,
I just like
right?
Scott Lobdell, yeah.
So yeah, even though Marvel still had some big time writers and artists, I mean, the forefront of Image being the creator owned company of like
Mm,
that's where everybody wanted to go.
mm,
It kind of made it tough sometimes to either keep a creative team on a book or
mhm.
get the ones you want. So
Well, I always sometimes thinking, and hopefully you might feel a little bit like this as well. I would have loved to have seen Image occur when artists like Dave Cockrum were around.
hmm
You know, the amount of characters he created for X-Men. You know,
Yeah.
we're talking about the whole second generation practically, and then you've got the Starjammers, and then so on and so forth. Just imagine what he could do if they were just his characters. But
hey,
I suppose that's
you can reflect. We can reflect all we want about what, but for 1998 personally, probably one of the biggest years of my life. But also for comics, there's a lot of stuff going on.
Cool. Yeah. Excellent. Right, we're going to jump into our first book. This is the 13th Crusaders book. He's off on a super secret mission to find me Miss Marvel #1 at a reasonable price. I'm not paying shipping otherwise. And it's this little corker. This is the Nail. This is #1. It's a 3-issue run, a miniseries. It came out in July '98. All the books in today's show are from '98. It's a kind of New Year theme, I guess. You can buy all 3 parts of this as separate little one-shots for a total of £8 on eBay. All right. On Go Collect, there is no price for this. So all that means is Go Collect haven't at some point sold anyone. So that's fine. It's written by Alan Davis, art by Alan Davis. We talk about Alan Davis, so the inks have to be by Mark Farmer. Yeah. Or Paul Neary if you want to go back in time. Colours are by Patricia Mulvihill. And letters are also by Patricia Pretense. Too many Patricias, too many P's in that. I'm going to say right now, just before you get into this, I'll say right now that I absolutely adore Alan Davis. All right, I loved him on Excalibur. I loved when he wrote Excalibur. I think his art more recently has become a little bit flat in places, but generally speaking, I love Alan Davis. Just saying. Right, cool.
I traditionally consider Alan Davis to be a Marvel artist, and this is
that's interesting.
Yeah, this is the first time I looking at this book. I was like, "Is this the first time I've ever seen Alan Davis draw any DC characters?"
Well, he had a small run in Detective Comics around the 570s, about 568 to 573, something like that.
So blink and you miss it.
Yeah, pretty much. And I suppose his bow out was the first part. Was it the first part? I think it was the first part of the Year 2 storyline. I think he did the first issue, and then Todd McFarlane took over. But yeah, it's blink and you miss it, but it's gorgeous.
Yeah,
but I think
I remember him on X-Men. I remember him on Excalibur.
Wolverine, that Bloodlust book.
Yep,
gorgeous.
Yep,
cool. Excellent. So, what did you think of The Nail?
Well, I thought it was interesting, and when I was reading it, something came up to me that I was like, you know what, I have to ask Johnny this. Why, when I read an Elseworld story from DC, I think they're great. I love reading alternate universe type DC stories. Something, and this the premise of this, right, is that the Justice League comes together with no Superman, right? Right there on the first page, they show the rocket go by, and the Kents never find him, right? So so there's no Superman, right? And what happens if the Justice League gets together without him, and what kind of an impact does he have on the rest of everything? Which turns out to be pretty significant, right? In the first issue anyway, because that's all I read. But why do I love these books so much? But when I read an alternate universe Marvel story, I get very upset over their lack of ideas.
Well, I think there's two things going on with that. That's a really great question to ask. One, you are as an observer of yourself, my friend, you are heavily invested in the Marvel universe. Of course. You like what you like, and this is how it works. So when someone goes and changes it, you're kind of like, whoa. Imagine if it was you drink Starbucks or you drink Costa, right? But you're more of a Starbucks kind of guy.
Yeah.
Costa gives you an alternative flavor every now and again, and you think, yeah, That's canny. That's nice. Interesting. But Starbucks changed the recipe, and you go apeshit because Starbucks is your thing.
Yeah.
That's
No,
kind
you
of
know what? You're absolutely right. When I determined that with DC, it has been long established that there were many other universes, and if there's a story, it's from like Earth 1 or Earth
yeah.
2 or Earth X or Earth Prime, or one of those mini Earths, so that they can easily explain away this is an Earth where Superman's not there.
Yeah.
And then in Marvel, everything happened in the 616 because it was the world outside your window, and if it
Yeah.
was something alternative, it was in What If.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. So what
Wasn't
if?
the what if wasn't the greatest quality sometimes.
Right. But I mean, but a what if story was not real, not in
Yeah.
continuity, didn't really count. Much like these, but with this one, with DC, I'm much more receptive, I think, to an alternative idea of a different universe, and I think that comes from just always, from the beginning when I started reading DC, there was always Earth 1 and Earth 2, and different. All the characters were slightly different but the same. Flash, Green Lantern, Golden Age Superman versus Silver Age, stuff like that. So when I read something from Marvel, it kind of goes up my butt sideways.
And don't forget, right? This book came out in '98. All right,
Yeah.
the first Elseworld book with the official Elseworld tag on it. Although people will say The Dark Knight Returns is an Elseworld story. I get it. I understand. It wasn't originally. The first one was Gotham by Gaslight, and that was back in 89, 88, 89. So DC have had practically 10 years of telling these Elseworld stories. So they've had plenty of practice. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And when they do it in a prestige format like this, they are going to pull out the stops and they're going to pull out the best creators they can. No disrespect to anybody who worked on a What If, but we've looked at a few on this show and we can see that the art's not as great on there, or and it doesn't work. But you turn around and say, right, we've got Alan Davis doing a 3-issue prestige format What If book. You'd be like, you know what? I'll be all over that, like ink on a page.
There you go.
Yeah.
And the art in here is beautiful, by the way. So.
Oh, I mean, the art in here is so good. Have you ever seen Batgirl look as hot? That's all I'm saying. Yeah. Batgirl has got it going on. And then, I mean, Canary, Fishnet, what more do you want?
Yeah.
If you like Alan Davis' art, you will love this. It's him to a T.
It's there are not very many artists that you look at and you're like, that's so and so, right?
Yeah.
That's Alan Davis, that's John Byrne, that's Neil Adams. You know the art when you see it. You don't need to look at it twice. You know that it's that person. And Alan Davis is one of those very recognizable with the facial structures and the just the anatomy of the characters that he's drawing.
Long legs.
Oh yeah. Amazing stuff. So
I mean, look, there she is. Whitwoo. Be still my beating heart. All right, so the idea here is, of course, you mentioned it. It's a world without Superman. It's called the Nail because on the way to Smallville, Ma and Pa Kent getting a flat tire. A nail stops them from getting there. They decide to give up and not go, and hence the world falls around that. There's also a huge anti-alien sentiment built into this, which is Lex Luthor's megalomania, as you'd expect. But is it really Lex in the long run? You don't know. There are a host of DC characters in this. You've got the Justice League, you've got the Bat Family, you've got Catwoman, you've got Doom Patrol, you've got the Outsiders. So for you to enjoy this book, you've got the Green Lantern Corps, Adam Strange. You're gonna have to know some DC lore, right? Or else you don't appreciate where the differences are. I would have thought.
Well, yeah. You just realize, without a Superman, does Green Arrow get killed by a Mazo? And also Hawkman, who we find out later.
Yeah.
Those are the things. does that force shield remain there?
Yeah,
You know.
exactly. Yeah. All in all, I think this is a really good example. In my notes, I've kind of written how this feels like Watchmen meets Elseworld meets the DCU
Mm.
because it is quite a serious book.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. It's very much the alien sentiment now. You could read as anti-racism, very much the way we do with X-Men. Um, it's interesting how Davis pulls apart the different ideas of the heroes and who does what. Batman's super mysterious, so it hurts him being mysterious. But Wonder Woman's like the pin-up girl, and she's there for publicity, not for doing anything real, and all that
Right.
sort of stuff comes out. I mean, there's some cheesecake. There's a scene in one of the second issues, I have to say, that I absolutely loved. They're in the snow, so Canary is there with a jacket zipped up, but she's still wearing the fishnets in the
Oh,
snow. Well done.
as you do.
Well, as she does. I don't know what you wear in the snow, you Bostonians. What's that all about? All right.
Shorts and t-shirts.
No fishnets. All right,
Shovel in
okay.
the
There you go, The Nail. A gorgeous book. You can get it relatively cheap. You can get it in trade paperback. And I think there's also a second volume out that continues that story, again by Alan Davis. So check. Well worth checking out down the line. Right, before we get into our next book, I think it's time for one of our adverts. This show dropped yesterday, so check it out. You'll find two familiar people on it. Pretty much how that works. Here it goes. There you go. No Price Podcast with that guy as the host. There you go.
And that guy. Wait. Which way am I going? That guy.
Yeah. So that our New Year episode of that dropped. Go check it out. With no MCU to talk about. I know Disney yet. It's all about the comics.
Yeah, it's all about comics this week. Wow, who knew?
Who knew? All right. Now, if you are a fan of No Price Podcast, you know that the professor often trumpets the fact that the Avengers book has no Avengers in it. Well, I'm afraid he's going to make up for it this time around. Here we go. This is Avengers #1, The Heroes Return from February 98. eBay in the UK, you can get this for anywhere between £3.25p to £6. And go collect. At grade 8, it will cost you $7. And at 9.6, it will cost you $95. Written by Kurt Busiek, art by the late great George Perez, inks by Al Vey, colors by Tom Smith, and Richard Starkins of Comic Craft even provides the letters. A quick question before we get into this, Bud.
Sure.
It seems anyone can be an Avenger. Can I be an Avenger?
Everybody's an Avenger in this book, so yeah, more the merrier.
Yeah.
So,
take it away, sir.
So when we decided that we were going to talk about the 1998 books, and I already said this was the year of the reboot, there was no book more in need of a reboot than the Avengers. It died a horrible death, and then got relaunched with Rob Liefeld manning the helm for a pitiful 12 issues, and then it went away, and now the heroes are back. And yeah, hey, take a look. They give you the rundown on every character in the book, and there's a lot of them, right? They're all Avengers, and even some of them I didn't even remember were Avengers. And interesting, right? So it's been 25 years now. I can't be expected to remember all this stuff.
Of course you can. You're the professor.
So So the heroes, and they all know that they're back from the heroes reborn world, wherever they were, So they all remember that they were gone, and now they're back. And in fact, they have to go through. Apparently, Crystal has to go through with being declared alive, even
Yeah.
though she's not an American citizen. She's a citizen of the moon. I don't
Yeah.
know what that kind of meant, but
Got a question, haven't you? Really?
so this book, they touch on every character that was ever an Avenger, and even those characters that don't show up. There's a page where they say, "Oh, Deathcry sends her regards," or something like that, and you're just like, "Oh, okay." So I remember that character was an Avenger. That character was an Avenger.
I didn't
And
think Darkhawk was an Avenger. Was he on West Coast for a while?
I believe he was on West Coast towards the end of the run,
Okay.
but very briefly, very briefly. But this book starts with all these Asgardian characters, or Asgardian monsters showing up and attacking all of the Avengers. And I think the thing that works on this beginning of this book, and something that is painfully missing in the Avengers that's being published today, is the first part of this book. They're introducing all of the B tier Avengers, and you see them first. You see She-Hulk, you see Namor, you see Moondragon, you see Spider-Woman. I'm just on this page alone.
Yeah.
They show Hawkeye. They show, you get to see a little bit of everybody. Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, all of these characters that were Avengers before, whether or not you cared about them, right? Or whether or not, like me, you never even remembered that they were Avengers at the time. They showed Rage, who was around for a New York minute, and D-Man, Sandman. These are all characters that were Avengers at one time or another. Whether or not you liked them, and even then, when they do bring you back into the restored Avengers Mansion, which you hadn't seen since 1986 when it was destroyed, you have like a big picture of all of the Avengers that couldn't make the meeting.
Yeah.
All the deceased members, right? So all the deceased are inactive, which I thought was very cool. And here you have the original lineup: Giant Man, Wasp, Scarlet Witch, Giant Man, Wasp, Iron Man, Cap, and then they bring back Thor, who had up until now not reappeared yet, and there he is. So now you have the original 5, or the original 4 plus Cap, right? No Hulk. They do explain Hulk's disappearance, but this book really, really goes a long way into restoring to glory, right? The Avengers book that I loved as a child, by kind of recognizing the history that has come before, giving you those character moments between the characters that you love. And of course, the big mystery here is, who's going to actually end up on the team. And you don't actually really find out until issue 4, I think, because up until then, it's just a gigantic battle royal free-for-all.
Yeah.
And of course, the villain, who everybody thinks, they even say it, they think that it's Loki, turns out to not be Loki. It turns out to be Morgana Le Fay and Mordred, which I thought was an inspired choice if everybody was thinking Loki. So,
but you think Loki because of the history, isn't it? Because that's the reason why they came together in the first place.
Well, yeah, and then then of course they have the Johnny approved MacGuffins in this book, where the Surtur, the Sword of Surtur, and the Twilight Sword, that's what they call it, and the Norn Stones, where Morgana Le Fay ends up with both of those, and and that the Avengers are going to have a hard time overcoming that, and in Jarvis, right? You can't have an Avengers without Jarvis, yeah.
Sure.
So great book, great creative team. This is a return to glory for the Avengers in 1998, and they hadn't been good in years. If you like this, there's Carol as Binary in that picture.
Yay.
And she ends up being on the team.
Yay.
So what did you think of it?
I looked at this
Many
book.
Avengers.
there is that. I'm not going to lie. There is a shed load of Avengers of which there is no impact to this. A couple of things that I noticed reading this book. One was it is very much aiming for the old school type, but also bringing new readers into the fold at the same time. There is no reason why Janet would say at the bottom of that page, Midgard, oh, he means Earth. Janet, you've been around for quite some time. You know who he means. You don't
Right.
need to explain it, you know. And then later on, as they're having the big kapow team meeting, where's that at?
Do you like the
Spider-Man
way
gets,
they let her Thor?
yeah, but that's standard now, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's that. There you go. Spider-Man gets off. He's like, dude, I'm too busy. I can't help you. I've got my own stuff to sort out. Last time you said that, Spider-Man, somebody died. Mr. Busiak doesn't know how to write Spider-Man, it seems.
Well, then they have them walking out the front door instead of crawling around the
Yeah,
wall.
which you know how my feelings on that.
Right.
I've also mentioned, and I know people think I'm sacrilegious for saying this, but I'm not a huge George Perez fan. And especially when it's overly inked like this. I like his early stuff, you know, when he was on Avengers the first time around,
Yeah.
before he left for Teen Titans. This I just find really, really heavy. It looks more like Pat Broderick than it does George Perez at times. I didn't know that those weren't the Infinity Stones. I thought they were the Infinity Stones. I don't know. Marvel had to do something to rescue the Avengers and Cap and whomever else they farmed out to Image in the first place. This is very much a harken back to the best of the Avengers. You just look at the creators, Kurt Busiek, you've got George Perez. These are people who are synonymous with that style of superhero writing. Does it have its place in 98? I'm not sure, because I think, you know what, I think the audiences have kind of moved on from this type of storytelling. I think maybe you could argue that the Avengers hasn't, especially more recently, hasn't maintained that level of quality. But the threat seems really viable, you know, that considering you've got all this power kicking around. As always, Scarlet Witch is the damsel in distress, it seems. Love seeing Crystal in this. The guy who I said, Richard Starkins did a great job lettering this. This is a heavy book.
Yep.
It takes some reading. So great job by Richard there. You know, Scarlet Witch, back to the altering reality as always. Where's it go? I think from an introduction, I would have liked a less is more approach. You know, like focus on the core characters first before spreading out and instead of sort of like having a great big crowd and then wheedling it down to who your team is. I'd like to start with a smaller and build.
Right.
That's kind of how I look at things a little bit. I will say this: after reading this book, I was kind of like, "Oh, I wonder what's going on." I was actually genuinely intrigued as to see where this was going to go. So I'm going to have to dig out number 2, I think, somewhere along the line.
You can always get the Marvel Unlimited app, and you don't have to dig anymore.
Yeah, I could. But then that eats into my comic buying fund. I mean, how many comics can I buy in one different way? I don't know.
It's only $10 a month. Not even that. So.
$10. If the exchange rate as it currently is, that's going to cost me.
Well, if you get an annual membership, it's only like $69.99.
All right, are you on commission or something? Is that how this works?
Hey,
you get recommend a friend rates. That's what it is. Recommend a friend, and it's like you get 10% off your own subscription. I see you.
I just want to share my love with the world. That's all I want.
I think this is a great kickoff for bringing Marvel back. Definitely.
Oh yeah,
it does what Marvel does best: the grandiose, the spectacle.
And you think of like with this is just the tip of the iceberg, where they're also at the same time relaunching Cap with great creative teams, right? Iron Man, Thor, Fantastic Four. And I'm just trying to remember the creative teams on all these other books when they were. I know Mark Waid was on Captain America, right?
Yeah.
And
It's
in a
funny, I
fantastic.
put that in my notes. I put that in my notes. Kurt Busiek and Mark Waid are those types of A-list characters that are creators. And people say Busiek's not A-list. Busiek's A-list. He is.
Yeah.
I don't care. If you're a Marvel fan, Busiek is A-list.
Yeah.
Every time.
I think
Yeah, I
that,
mean, we talked about him recently, yesterday. You know, he's still putting out great books. So you tell me he's not A-list.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not going to tell you that. He's A-list to me. I'm just trying to remember the creative teams on all those books. I know that they stole Dan Jurgens off of Superman to do Thor, right? And
let's see if I can find out.
I know we're not going to be sitting here Googling, but
I'm typing this. I'm going. Keep yourselves entertained for 2 seconds.
Yeah, no, they were just like some huge names, just coming out of the woodwork and bringing Marvel back to glory, and like I said before, by the end of 1998, they're going to wrap up Spider-Man and reboot with a new Amazing Spider-Man #1 and a new Peter Parker #1. So,
all right, okay, cool. So I've looked on where have I looked? Where am I? I'm on Marvel.com. There you go. And we have stories by. Are you ready for Cap?
Yeah.
In no particular order, we've got Jeff York, whoever he is, Kurt Busiek, Barbara Kessel, Carl Kessel, pencilers, Dale Eaglesham, Ron Garney, Mark Bagley. You know, so you're talking, if you're a Marvel fan, you know those names.
Yeah.
You know, they just roll off the tongue.
Yeah. It was Wade and Garney on Captain America. I remember that.
So, I mean, when you think Captain America, you think Garney. I think Wade. And I think Mark Waid is an absolutely underrated Marvel writer. Very much of the Chuck Dixon mold for DC. I just sometimes wish these guys were still, putting out great stuff for Marvel and DC respectively. But I appreciate that sometimes their audience isn't the audience they're aiming for isn't us. So
right, for sure.
Yeah, which is why we had the whole Heroes Reborn element to start with. And it's funny we bring this up. We've just mentioned quickly. We hear a lot of talk about down the line. Is that what DC is going to do? Is DC going to farm out some of its characters as licensing to other comic companies?
Yeah, who knows, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the only reason you wouldn't do that from DC's point of view, I would imagine, is because of the media crossovers to movies and TVs and shows and stuff like that. But as you can see, recently Warner Brothers have cancelled practically everything. They've cut everything back. So if you cut everything back, why do you need a comic book company? At least that's what they think. But,
where else are they going to get their ideas from?
Yeah, I'm very much a comics first, everything else second. I'm afraid. So
no, me too.
Yeah, cool. All right. Okay, so the next one. This is a little bit of left field.
Yeah,
I go left field. What can I say? I always do. It seems to be. This is Nightwing Huntress #1. It's a 4-part miniseries from May '98. This book will cost you on eBay £2 to £10. Go collect anywhere between 24 to 28, depending on the grades. Funnily enough, Go Collect have a higher grade sold at $24 and a lower grade sold at 28. I don't know what that means.
Interesting.
Where's Lucas when you need him? Eh? Right, so it's written by Devin Grayson, art by Greg Land, with inks by Bill Sienkiewicz. I know I've said his name wrong. Noel Giddings is on colors, and John Constanza is on letters. Now, for those people who think, isn't Chuck Dixon on this? No, this is Devin Grayson. Devin Grayson is probably more famous for being one of the writers who had Nightwing sexually assaulted by Tarantula back in Nightwing 87. But that's not for another 4 years from this point. All right. At this stage, Nightwing is being written by Chuck Dixon in his own book. and Devin Grayson's doing this one shot. The main crux of this book is that we all know the difference between Huntress and the Bat family. The Huntress, in this case, is not Helena Wayne. She is Helena Bertinelli. So she's the daughter of a crime lord who's been killed. Her whole family's been killed. As such, she's out to kill Mafia, which puts her against Batman, who has a no-kill policy.
Mhm.
Story goes that this young lady gets 86th, as they say, and the dude in the frame is a gangster. All right, so that puts him fairly squarely in the Huntress's sights. However, Dick Grayson knows that the guy didn't do it because he was watching the guy at the waterfront do some gun running.
Mhm.
Right, so Dick Grayson, Nightwing, is the bad guy's alibi. Of course, the Huntress, being the Huntress, doesn't buy that. And before you know it, you can say, "You argue with me, you're just Batman in tights," yada, yada, yada. And surprisingly, they end up a little more intimate than you'd expect them to be. For some crazy reason. I don't know what's going on there. It's a fun little diversion for me. But the time Nightwing's quite, I always think Nightwing of the 90s is very much like a Peter Parker style character. You know, he's
Yeah.
very quite light, he's
Yeah.
acrobatic, so he has that element going on as well. He has issues because he has rent to pay and all that. He's not living off Bruce Wayne's fortune.
Well, he's also the jokester kind of foil
Yeah,
to Batman's grim character. I mean, just
absolutely right.
right in here, he's doing a shadow puppet of
Yeah,
Batman. You know,
just
that's
that's cool. Just fun elements, right?
Hmm.
So mix them up with Huntress, who's a dark character to start with, creates a lot of grey areas, to say the least. Um, we know Greg Land is known for cheesecake art, and some of that is clearly on show here. Top page, top panel there. You know,
Yep.
cheesecake. Yeah, cheesecake, and it's all over the place. However, with Sienkiewicz, how do you say it?
Sienkiewicz.
Sienkiewicz is inks being heavier. It gives an element to Dick Grayson and Huntress, very similar to the Joey Cavalieri book that Huntress had way back when, which was for mature readers, and it was really dark and gritty. So I think that works quite well as well. If you bought this expecting a light-hearted Nightwing book, you are going to be disappointed. You want to see Nightwing being clever for a change and doing his own thing, then this is more your cup of tea. We talked about how Kurt Busiek's still in the business. Greg
Yep.
Land's still in the business. He's drawing Avengers all-out action at the minute. So, And there's the kicker of the story is this police detective turns up looking for his partner, who just so happened to be the girl that was killed at the start of the book.
Which you
Dum,
wouldn't,
dum, dum.
Yeah, I was like, when I saw that, I was like, wait, was that the girl that got
I
killed
did
in the
exactly the
first
same.
page?
I did exactly the same. I was like, was that? Is that? Was that?
Yeah, they could have done a better job of letting us know that was who
Yeah,
it was. So,
yeah, you could have.
but I imagine you find that out in part 2.
Indeed, So I have this run. I have this whole run. I thoroughly enjoy it. I don't understand why Dick Grayson has to be the man whore of the whole DC universe. Because you remember back in the day, he had Starfire, he slept with Barbara Gordon, now he's sleeping with the Huntress. On top of that, in the new 52, he does exactly the same. Sleeps with the Helena Bertinelli then as well. It's like, dude, keep it in your pants. Obviously, Dick by name, Dick by nature.
Oh, jeez.
Well, I had to go there, right?
Yeah,
I
you
had
did.
to. Sorry. So, how was this for you then? A second dip into the DC world.
Yeah, well, this was in my DC wheelhouse at the time. I think I have this book too. The thing that really kind of always has struck me about the Batman universe was just the dark and muddy costumes and inks, and just the overall feeling of, I don't even know if they're in they're in Gotham because
Yeah.
Harvey Bullock's in it, right?
Yep.
But yeah, it's always dark, it's always nighttime, it's always it's always kind of Batman, Daredevil, all the same colors, the same
Yeah,
color palette, right?
yeah,
Um,
that's red.
the other thing that I really liked about this book was now talk to me more about Harvey Bullock. Was he first introduced in the animated series, or
No, he was introduced way back when. He's a comic book creator. Created, I believe it's Detective Comics. I'll just double check. And he was originally brought in to be a spy for Hamilton Hill, who was running for mayor.
okay?
Um, and he was going to sort of like, is it usurp? Is that the word I'm looking for? Um, Commissioner Gordon. He was always going to kind of go back and see Gordon's doing this and Gordon's doing that. Yeah, I was right. Detective Comics 441. There you go.
Okay.
And then he was just when he was kind of like watching Gordon go about his business, he became impressed. He became won over by Gordon, and then has become his lifelong ally since then. Of course, he's got a new life in the animated series and Gotham.
Right.
So they're there. There you go.
All right. But I actually enjoyed his appearance in this.
Yeah,
So and he did have the slovenly appearance that I expected from him from the
yeah,
animated series. So um,
yeah. Well, if you
it
think
was
about it, 98, the animated series is still quite popular. You
yep.
know, so that works.
Yeah,
Um,
so this was a good a good pick. I cut. Okay, you're right. It was out of left field, but it did kind of take me back to what was going on, and this is my area of DC, my
yeah,
era, put the post crisis stuff going on, and then pre New 52. So
yeah.
you know,
I absolutely love Bertinelli as a character. I think she's class. I love how she's so different to the rest of them. You
yeah,
know, I mean, to be fair, both her and Bruce Wayne have pretty much the same origin. He sees his family get gunned down. She sees her family get gunned down, and yet they go two different routes, as it were, to get their own version of justice.
Hmm.
So, um, no, at the time, I think Sinkovich was doing a lot of inking work for DC to give it this kind of look.
Yeah,
I think Sal Buscema also did a lot of inking work over Jim Aparo.
yeah. Or is that
Um,
look like Klaus Janson, like Lee Week
yeah,
stuff
yeah,
too?
exactly.
It's like the same. It's like it's always the same culprits that you see that
Mm,
kind of dark wash everything.
yeah. To give like a uniform look, isn't it? Really, we
Yeah.
want it to be. We want Gotham to be Gotham. We want Metropolis to be sunny. We want, that's
Well, the
kind
same
of.
thing we complained currently about all the X-Men books looking the same.
well, yes and no. I mean, there's a difference between giving it the same sort of tone as to having artists change the style to mimic each other.
Uh, very true.
So I think pretty much you can see the differential here between this kind of artist and Jim Aparo, for example, or Norm Brayfogle at the time.
Right.
So cool. I just think it's a really good book. I like it when the back characters do proper detective work. You know.
Yeah. And not really. I like those street level gangster villains too.
Yeah.
They work in Gotham. They
Mm,
work in these books. You don't need to have a colorful villain like a Joker or a
yeah.
Penguin to have a readable
Yeah.
Batman family book. So
And this, I suppose, we talk about Batman being attractive as a character, but for me, it's always things like he may not have any powers, but by the same token, very few of his villains have any actual real superpowers.
mhm.
There's only Clayface and potentially Man-Bat.
Well,
Other than
Killer
that,
Croc.
yeah, okay, Croc, yeah. So other than that, I mean, Bane's just on steroids. He's on roids. Yeah,
Mhm.
Joker's bonkers. Penguin's a businessman. You know,
Yeah,
corrupt although he may be.
Two Faces a gangster. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. These are like human villains that going against a human bad guy. You wouldn't put Brainiac against Batman, for example.
right.
Yeah. So I think he's of his world, and I think this book encapsulates that brilliantly. But
Yeah.
minus the bat. Well, there you go. Cool.
There you go. You don't need Batman when you have Nightwing in there.
Yeah, not with his buns of steel. It's the thing. Google it. Go look at everyone loves his bun.
Oh,
Apparently.
I know.
All right, there you go. Our first show for the new year. Check it out. Three up, three down, as always. So
Yeah.
welcome 1998 to the fold of the Old-Timers Comic Book Show. I'm sure we shall delve into further books down the line. Don't forget to check out the UCPN this fantastic 2023 for other shows, including Professor.
No Prize Podcast, all about Disney Plus, the MCU, and we talk some comics too.
Yeah. And you've also got the Definitive Crusade for all you DC fans. That show will be coming out in the next week or so. And for all you interview phobes, there is a new Outside the Panels due this week with yet another fantastic Kickstarter creator for you to get all excited about. What more could you want?
You
Really?
can't want anything else.
Exactly not. All right, Professor, thank you so much for spending the time.
Thank you, Johnny. Always
Excellent.
fun.
Always fun indeed, sir. All right, that's it. I've been your host, Johnny Machine Hughes, and as always, adios.